Now, you brought this up just a few minutes ago. We talked about this off the air before we got started. You're a teacher as well in the
Yes.
public school system. What got you involved with that?
So it just I before I started working at school, for the school system, I was just kind of working random jobs. Like I think I mentioned, like my first job was a skating rink. Uh
Mhm.
After that, I was like working at a sandwich shop, and like one of my friends, her mom worked. I'm not sure if she still works in the school district, but at the time she'd worked in the school district, and she told me like, "Hey, I think you have the temperament to work with kids. Like, I think you have the patience. I think you have the temperament. I think you have the attitude. Like, I think you have everything. I just think you do well." So I I applied, and I initially started with want to say he was a first grader. He was in a wheelchair, and I was just kind of helping him get around, making sure he was getting lunch, just taking him to classes. So that was kind of my first venture into the school system. And then the next day I had something totally different. Like I was just kind of bouncing from assignment to assignment. And then eventually I settled down with a boy who was nonverbal, and he was also in a wheelchair. And I worked with him for maybe about 2 months, and then got I I got moved into a class that was labeled ED. It's emotional distress, and it was varying backgrounds of kids, whether they had a rough home life, whether they just were just too energetic to function. Like they just could not focus at all. Whether they they're like the list goes on, but it was a lot of things that typical general classes, the teachers like, okay, just go to the office. Okay, just go to the office. Just they could not, or they just did not want to deal with those kids. So they would just always sent off to the office, or they'd be in detention, or they'd act up because they weren't getting attention from home, and now they're not getting attention at school. So they would end up uh, in the classroom that I worked in, and those kids, like, they taught me a lot, like a lot, because there were a lot of kids from my kind of background where they they understood what was going on around them, but it was just stuff kind of going on at home, whether maybe they weren't getting the attention that they felt they needed, or they just weren't getting the attention that they needed, whether they were skipping school, whether that they were like smoking weed or whatever with their friends, or they're getting into like things that they should not be getting into during school hours, or during getting into at that age. Like all those kids, I was like, okay, I can relate with that. Like I grew up with kids like that, or I grew up doing stuff like that. So when I was working with those kids, it was I was uh, I was maybe 22 when I first started. So I was super relatable. Like the way I dressed, the music I listened to was pretty much the same music that they were listening to. So it was very easy to connect with them. And some of them liked wrestling, so that would help.
Mhm.
Um, but like uh like a lot of those kids, they just really needed someone to listen to them, or someone to go hang out with them and play basketball. Like that's what I did with them. I just played basketball. We would listen to music. I would talk about whatever's going on in their life. They tell me what's going on. Like it was very it kind of made me think about those other teachers. Are like, what's going on? Like it's not that hard to connect with these kids.
No.
It just not takes it not only takes the extra second, but okay, they're into this. You can see that they're into this. They're showing that they're into this. Maybe talk about this. You know, don't be afraid to kind of like branch into their interests, especially if that's your job. Like, don't be afraid to branch into
Yeah,
their
take
interests,
take
because
up
it's only gonna
study up
it's
on
only
their
gonna enrich
interest.
you.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it enriches it. So, like, a lot of those kids, they really helped me in the sense of when I would tell them something, I was like, "Well, I think maybe I should, you know, I should do the same thing I'm telling them, like, it only seems right." Um, and some of these kids, as I got older and they got older, I had went out to a bar somewhere, and one of these kids, he had asked me like, "Hey, didn't you work at that school?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, it's you." And he was like, "Whoa, you remember me?" And I was like, "Yeah, I remember you." And he like kind of gave me like a short like thank you, like, like, I appreciate you just kind of being cool and not being like just on me like the way all the other adults were. Like, you were just kind of cool with my existence. And I was like, that made me feel good in the sense of when I would go to work, the class that I was in, we were an all black staff. And I knew what it was like to go home and get yelled at about something. And he knew what it was like to go home and get yelled at about something, whether it was your fault, whether it wasn't, whether it's about this or that. But when those kids came to school, I didn't want to yell at them because I didn't know what was going on at home. I didn't want to make them feel bad. I wanted to make sure that they came home, they came to school and they're at as positive as an environment as we can set for them. So when that kid had told me that, it made me feel like, okay, at least I was doing what I was trying to do. I didn't know I didn't know that I was doing it when I was 22, but I was doing the right thing. I was acting off my heart. Um, so yeah, working in the school systems definitely helped me a lot. Definitely helped me a lot. Uh, just definitely helped me learn and grow as well as just kind of be a good human, kind of be able to see things from the other side and not always think you know what it was like to be a kid and an adult would kind of yell at you and it wasn't your fault.
Mhm.
I tried to, okay, well, what happened? So I can understand, okay, was it your fault or was it not your fault?
Right.
Instead of being like, hey, it was your fault. Because you remember that feeling and there's nothing you could do about it as a kid. It's
Right.
kind of, so I kind of try to eliminate that as much as I can, especially working with kindergartners. I try to eliminate that feeling as much as you can. Um, to make them feel at ease. You never know what anyone's going through, but especially at a kid when they're coming to school, they're coming to a good environment. So you do not want to, come here and make them feel at ease by or unease by you did this, you're wrong, you're bad, you're this. So
Right. And just like this podcast here, the kids should feel like they're in a welcomed environment and a
yeah.
pleasant and friendly environment, and you were able to provide that for them, which is it really is heartwarming because, kids today they go through so much, especially with the internet and social media, technology, it's a
Oh,
huge part of our lives, and to see like, things that somebody, a little kid could be going through. It's just too much. It can be tough out there.
definitely. I couldn't imagine what it would be like for a kid growing up with the technology we have now, like all the social media.
Mhm.
I couldn't imagine how consuming it is. It is on them because I'm like I see how it is consuming on the friends around me and on people
Mhm.
around me. But to be a kid and that's kind of all you know,
Mhm.
I yeah, I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine.